Hey everyone! In video 160, I covered the temperature sensor reader app. This application supports a wide variety of sensors that connect to the Flipper's GPIO pins. Unfortunately, the version that's installed when you use lab.flipper.net hangs when you try to add a new sensor. Official APIs for the Flipper Zero also changed slightly, so the master branch no longer compiles. In the official Discord server, I've made the FAP available for people to download. Huge thanks to Roman for providing a fix. In this video, I'll start by showing you how to install the app on your Flipper Zero, and then we'll geek out discussing Flipper API firmware changes and how to monitor, identify, and fix some of the issues. Let's get started. Check to see if we're still in version 1.5 or if the application has been updated. If you have custom firmware where the application is pre-installed, it's possible the firmware developer fixed the code as well. If you haven't already, join the official Discord server. Once you're there, you're going to scroll down to CommunityWorks projects, and then in the search for temperature. And you'll find the Universal Temperature Sensor Reader. One of these posts in here near the bottom is where you're going to find the unitemp.fap file for your firmware, and then go ahead and click download. Next, we'll click on Show in Folder, and then go ahead and open QFlipper, and then go to the File Manager, SD card, Apps, GPIO. And then if you have a Unitemp.fap, go ahead and right click and say delete again to confirm the action. And then drag our FAP file that we've downloaded into our window. And then right click and say rename, and just rename it to Unitemp.fap. That'll take a second to rename. And then go over to our Flipper and go into Apps, GPIO, Temp Sensor Reader, and then go ahead and run that application. And when you click OK, you should see the list of sensors available. At this point, you're just using the application, so choose your sensor and your GPIO pin. The rest of the video, we'll look at some technical details for Flipper Zero. If your goal was just to get the sensor app working, hopefully this has helped you. Please take a moment to like the video. For the rest of the video, I'm still using the Unitemp app as my example, but this applies to any application. We'll go ahead and search for temp, and you can see that the temperature sensor is not listed. So this is because my Flipper Zero's firmware is not compatible with the temperature sensor. Go ahead and unplug our Flipper Zero, and now we search for temp, and you can see that temperature sensor reader app. So if an application is not showing up, try searching for the application with your Flipper Zero not connected to the computer. Next, we'll scroll to the bottom of the page, and you'll see under Developer a thing that says Manifest. We'll go ahead and open that. So we can see this is for version 1.5 of the application. And you can see that it was not able to compile for SDK version 86 and 85. I'll go ahead and right-click Inspect with the developer tools. And then we can grab the URL here, and I'll copy that to the clipboard and open a new tab. And you can see that catalog.flipper0.1/application/the application name/widget displays a nice widget for our application. Here's the stats for my Flipboard Simon application. So these widgets are live images similar to a weather widget that would show you the current weather. So here I've made a page with the applications that I've created or that I contribute to. So when new firmware comes out, it's an easy way to see the status. If you want additional details for your application, go ahead and click on that. That'll give you an error, and then replace where it says Unitemp/page with dashboard. And this is the health monitoring, and then we can search for our application name. Go ahead and click on the result, and then you should see for each app version for each SDK firmware version what the status was of the build, along with how many people have downloaded the application. So this was helpful for us for the Light Messenger when we discovered that some older builds of the firmware weren't supporting our latest version. And we can see here that it appears the latest firmware has an extra const qualifier and the application doesn't say const, so that's why it's not compiling. So here they're talking about SDK versions like version 86, and then F7 means Flipper 0. So if we head over to the Flipper 0 official firmware and we go into targets and then F7 and then API symbols CSV, you'll see the version. So here we can see that we're on version 86 for the current dev branch, and that matches this SDK 86 that we're talking about. So instead of dev, we can switch to a different branch or we can switch to a different tag. I'll switch to a different tag. So instead of 1.3.4 firmware, I'll go to 1.1.2. And here you can see we're in version 78.1. And so that 78.1 is this fourth one down where our build is succeeding for our application. And as we saw earlier, succeeding means it compiles, but it still may hang because of other bugs. So then version 1.2.0 is SDK 79.2. So those are matching as well. So next we'll jump back to the application and that manifest. And then in our manifest.yml file, this describes what application is actually being rendered. There's the GitHub link and there's the commit hash. So the App Store always pulls from whatever that origin URL is and only up to that commit hash. And it will go ahead and label this application as version 1.5. So that's not necessarily the same thing that's in your application.fam file. Again, it's this commit hash. So we'll go ahead and look at all of the commits. And then I'll search for that commit hash. I'm not finding anything here. Scroll down to make sure that it's in the buffer. It is. I have too many characters. So if we remove some of those, there's that commit. So everything since June 12th is not in the App Store. And we can see that there was a check-in for the fix freeze, and that's the check-in I used for video 160. In later firmware builds, it no longer compiled. And when this happens, when you go to issues, you'll get an open issue and it will say update the name of your app for SDK version whatever. And they'll have links to the logs and the build actions. Again, this happens for all applications. This has happened to my applications as well. Flipper keeps changing the APIs to make things more secure or add new features, and that sometimes breaks assumptions that we have in our applications. Our applications are open source, and sometimes in pull requests, you'll actually get a pull request where someone else made a change for various features. And in this case, someone even made a fix so that it works on the latest SDK build. So this was super awesome because I was able to just pull in this fix and build it and upload that to the Discord server. So if you happen to get that lucky, over on the right, when you click on code, you'll see this GHPR checkout and some number. And so this uses the GitHub CLI. So to install that, you click on learn more, and then there'll be a download for your operating system. So just go ahead and run that and then close any terminal windows when you're done. So I think that's worth a quick demo. We'll go to code and then copy to clipboard the URL of the GitHub. And then in the terminal window, I'll go ahead and do get clone -- recursive and paste in that GitHub URL. And then we'll CD into the project. So in this case, Unitemp Flipper 0. And right now we're on that master branch, which does have the fix for the older firmware. But next what we need to do is go to that pull request where they fixed the build. And then under code here, we'll copy to clipboard the GitHub command, paste that in. And this is going to use GitHub and create a new branch for us that we're on. So now we can see that we're on a different branch. So I have UFBT installed. My wiki covers how to install UFBT if you don't know how. And I'll just do a UFBT launch, which will compile the code and then run it on the Flipper Zero. Or it will compile the code and give us some errors. So I forgot to run UFBT update, which updated us to version 1.2.0, but our Flipper is running version 1.3.4. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and do UFBT update -v for our branch and 1.3.4. This time we're on version 1.3.4. QFlipper's not running, and we'll go ahead and do a UFBT launch again. And this time it successfully compiled and launched the application. I had already added a sensor from earlier in the video. We'll go ahead and click OK and go to delete and go ahead and say delete. Now we'll exit the app and start it again. And this time we see no sensors found and we're able to add new sensors. Over in our command window, it also tells you the path to the FAP if you want to share that FAP with someone else. So as an app developer, I think it's very helpful to go into the current dev branch of the firmware and grab that API symbols. And we'll go ahead and say raw so that we have all the contents. And we'll copy that into a file in Notepad or whatever editor you want. So this is what is in the SDK version 86. So we've saved that off. And then we'll go back down to an older version. Typically you want to go back in tags to like 3 or 4 older so that your application has support for all of the different firmwares. And again, we'll do the raw save, and this time we'll notepad it into the SDK version as 79.2. And then use whatever diff tool that you have, like if you have Beyond Compare or Visual Studio Code, WinDiff, whatever tool you're familiar with, and diff the old version against the new version. Obviously, at the top, hopefully you'll see that the version numbers changed. And then we can see what's been added since that older version. So this lets us know about new features and new methods. That second parameter, if it's a plus, it means it's available to your application. And if it's a minus, it means it's not available to your application. So here we can see that there were some CLI changes where things got removed and a bunch of stuff got added. So that can be really helpful to kind of see what components are changing a lot, what new features. Oh, that looks interesting. 4305 support. I guess I missed that update. I've been using the T5577 a lot, but I think I do have a bag of 4305s we can look at. And then here's some other new things that are added. And when you get this kind of alternating line effect, that's definitely something to drill into to make sure you understand what's changing here. So what's usually happened is that they've changed the interface ever so slightly, probably adding consts or an extra parameter, and that will probably cause your application to not compile. Yeah, so looking at that, there's a lot of different things here where they've added consts to make sure that the functions don't manipulate the data. For example, this function used to take a pointer to a pointer of characters, and now that second pointer is constant. So looking through pull requests, it does appear that EM4305 support is present on the Flipper Zero, and you should be allowed to at least write EM4100 data to it. Well, hopefully you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please leave them below or contact me on Discord.